welcome back to Diaries with Debbie Friday. Happy New Year as well. I know January is almost done, but Happy New Year. And I hope you guys have been having a very interesting and energetic and dynamic 2026 so far. I hope that it's been anything but boring, and I hope that the rest of it goes really well. But anyway, today I'm going to talk about a few different things, but mostly I'm going to talk about this concept that I've been thinking about called void space. And I've been thinking about this deeply for a while now, and different ideas around unreality, around time, clarity, analog desires, technology, and just all of that stuff. So I'm going to try to wrap a couple things together in this episode. So to start it all off, I was on Substack in December and just seeing and reading a bunch of these year-end posts and trend reports, and something that kept coming up over and over again was this idea of 2026 as the year of being offline. And I kept seeing things like not posting is the new status symbol, and 2026 is the year of offline living. And I just have been seeing these kind of posts all across social media, not just Substack, but it seems to me that there's this collective desire to live and exist offline, meaning to live without being seen or perceived or documented digitally, aka publicly. And this desire is the assertion that being online is being in public life, which I just find really interesting when I consider the origins of the internet. The internet started off as a private closed network. You can read up on ARPANET and the internet's military history, but even when it was introduced for public and commercial use around the 1990s, it did start off as a place for outsiders and, private gatherings and kind of more niche communities. In-person real life was the public. That was the standard, and online life was the deviation. It used to be considered weird to be online, especially in the very early days. Being a person who used the internet or talk to other people via the internet was seen as really weird. But now, a mere 30-something years later, online life functions as the public space. Online life is the standard, it's the default, and it's always on as well. There's no longer this idea of turning off your computer or shutting off the internet. And that happened with the introduction of the ability to access websites and apps via the smartphone. Because of the smartphone now, the internet is always on and it is always with us. And that makes real life now the deviation. Real life is the alternative, because you can go offline, that's a saying, but you can't go online, because the assumption is that we're always online and online is always on. And now that most of the internet is social media instead of being separate websites, this has given social media the status of the commons. It's the town square, it's where people gather. And, it's definitely undergone a crazy evolution since its inception. And the social media we have now is so different from the social media we had even just 5 years ago. And this mostly has to do with the introduction of algorithms and monetization and, the financialization of human experiences. These are very powerful forces that influence the way that people behave in these public digital spaces. One of my mutuals on TikTok makes these excellent media analysis videos where she often goes deep into sociological analysis of media and social media and stuff, and how people behave and how things have changed over the years. Her name is Beightol. I will link her profile in the description. But the other day I was watching a video of hers where she was analyzing the production of dating and romance content as these human experience assets that people consume. And it just got me thinking about how much even just the container of social media has influenced human behavior, to the point where to exist online is now to produce the show of oneself and one's life. And it's if we're always online, we're always producing the story of ourselves for the consumption of others. And it's not even a conscious thing anymore. It's literally this subconscious psychosocial force that is in the very structure of the platform itself. With every post, every video, everything, we're producing content. And that makes online existence a commodified existence, and we can't escape it. Like, even me here speaking to you and making this podcast, like, I'm still producing a story of myself and my life for you to consume. Like, none of us can escape it, truly. I think that after having been under the influence of these forces for the last, half a decade, it seems to me that there's like this craving to return to offline life, like a return to the real, a desire to disconnect, a desire to not be a commodified subject. And, I even see it in myself. Like, I spent most of December off of my phone very intentionally. My screen time plummeted to something like not even 2 hours on certain days. And that was mostly reading stuff on Substack. Like, that's what I was doing. And for me, this was just like very intentional because if I'm being honest, like, I was tired, I was just like tired of being consumed straight up. Like, for my astrology girls, like, I'm a 12th houser, okay? Sun in the 12th house. I was tired of having to perform constantly online. Like, right now, I've kind of abandoned my main Instagram as well as TikTok. I was just over it. And I was also tired of just being overstimulated and scattered and not being able to think clearly. Like, I just had this feeling that I just didn't have like cognitive space, and I was really craving this feeling of emptiness where I could be full of my own thoughts, where I could be full of myself and whatever was going on with me without these like really like intangible distractions or all of this like psychic noise, because that's what I find happens with being on social media these days. It's just so much consumption in consecutive mini doses, and you end up filled with all of this stuff, like all of these thoughts, ideas, images, etc., that are not real, in the sense that you only interact with this stuff in the online world. None of it is actually concretized into physical reality. Like, and on top of that, with AI now, a lot of this is increasingly becoming not real in a more literal sense. Like, this picture or this video of this person or event is not real. Like, none of this happened. This person doesn't exist, etc., etc. Like, these days, I swear, like, I will see a picture online and I doubt it first before anything. Like, I'm always just like, this is probably AI generated. And I look for clues that like the picture is AI generated. Like, I'm very suspicious. And it's not because of like a preoccupation with AI or anything. It's just because literally now, like, AI is so good that it can generate pictures that look like real life. And it's harder and harder to tell that it's not actually a real photo or video or whatever. An online space right now is just like, it's just a lot of thought forms and egregores and these things that have psychic dimension but no material dimension. And of course, that's part of life. That's part of what makes up reality and our world, for sure. Like, I'm not saying these things are always bad, and I'm not trying to moralize AI and its use. Like, that's a whole different conversation. And it's like Baudrillard said, like, artifice is the heart of reality. But at the same time, I do think that there has to be a balance. Like, you actually cannot live being made up of more unreality than reality. Like, when that happens, human beings go crazy. Like, we lose our minds. We become very confused and unhappy and honestly, like, unproductive in the physical sense. And that's because we're physical beings, so we need grounding in physical, tangible, material reality as well. We can see that in the way that this craving for offline is accompanied by another desire to bring back analog technologies. Like, it's just like how people are buying iPods again and digital cameras and CDs and magazines, and people are scrapbooking and they're journaling and they're using dumb phones, and people want physical books and they want things that they can hold in their hands that are not their phones. We're craving physical material objects. And I think what I really want to talk about is the idea that this craving for offline and for the physical is in a sort of tension with the unreality that we all live in, this digital, speculative, immaterial world that we have now. And this tension is giving rise to what I call void space. Void space is a space between the unreal and the real. It's a space between physical, material reality and the immaterial, the imagined reality. Void space is an in-between space. It is neither full nor empty, but rather both. It's a temporal spatial pocket, which is like a fancy big girl way of saying that it's a condition of being rather than a literal space outside of the self, It has to do with embodiment. And when something has to do with embodiment, I often think of it as being both inside and outside. It's outside because it deals with the physical body, but it's also inside because its processes are interior. Now, collectively, we're being pushed towards void space and we're also craving it. We're craving some sort of in between the chaos of unreality and like the simplicity of analog living. Like, I feel like we're caught between two worlds, two dimensions, two ways of being and engaging with each other and our surroundings. And, I wouldn't call void space a regression. Like, I don't think that void space is about going back to something. Like, there's nothing to go back to, and there's no going back. Like, the old world, the world that we used to live in, the world that we grew up with, that doesn't exist anymore. And even if it did, we couldn't go there. Time does not move forward or backward. It just goes around. But because it goes around, because it spirals, this is actually a hope frequency, because it means that, anything could happen. And that space where anything could happen, that is void space. I'm going to talk about that more in a moment, but just like follow me on another train of thought here. So I recently read the Solvej Balle, I think that's how you pronounce her name, but the Solvej Balle book. It's called On the Calculation of Volume. And it is the story of a woman who is stuck in the same day of her life. Like, she basically relives the 18th of November over and over and over again. And she's stuck in this kind of like time loop of sorts. And that's not a spoiler, that's just the premise. So anyway, I read this book and it felt connected to this idea of void space because of how the protagonist of the story is stuck in this loop, which actually removes her from the rest of the world and from humanity and other people, because she's the only one that's even aware that there is a loop. To everyone else, it's just the 18th of November. Like, it's just an ordinary day. And in a way, she's inhabiting void space because she's become unlinked from the timeline of everything around her. She says the sentence over and over in the book. She says, "Time has fallen apart." And I think about our current online environments and how accelerated and chaotic and like slopified it's all become. There's just like so much information, and a lot of it is increasingly becoming very low quality information, in the sense that it's either junk or it's a reproduction of something else, Just think about like the most popular app in the world right now, TikTok, which, like, don't get me wrong, like, I love TikTok, in a way. Like, I really do love TikTok. It's a good app, right? And obviously, like, I post on there, and some of you listening right now, you probably found me through there. But just think about, for example, like how TikTok even became a popular app in the first place. Like, it was based on the idea of people lip syncing to other people's songs. Like, lip syncing is pure reproduction. It's pure mimesis. It's pure duplication. Like, it's not about your own individual talent, It's about who can reproduce the original the most, not even the best, because it's all about volume. Like, quality just doesn't really matter in the same way. And that was just like the beginning of what we have now. Like, the reproduction that we have now on the internet is completely accelerated by algorithms and AI technologies, and they just like churn this shit out 24/7, 365. It's even mutated to the point now where it's like it's the AIs that are consuming all of their own reproduction in order to train itself to reproduce some more. Like, it's a loop, like, we're stuck in this cultural, economic, and ideological loop. Time has fallen apart. And similar to the protagonist of the Solvej Balle book, people want to unlink, they want to just like log the fuck off. Like, the desire for offline is a desire to break out of this loop. And because we can't go backwards in time, And because we still have to exist within online in various ways, people are starting to cultivate ways of being in between, which is void space. Like people are cultivating void space. The protagonist in the book, she also does this as well. Like she learns to cultivate a void space for herself where she can contemplate and think and decide and, just like live a real life while also having to exist in the time loop at the same time. And this is what people are doing. It's what they're being pushed towards. It's what they're craving right now. Void space is a way to deal with the loop. It's a way to deal with slop and overproduction and never ending reproduction. And like I've said in previous episodes, like namely the Resist the Slop episode, slop demands overproduction. The construction of unreality needs overproduction. It needs to replicate itself forever in order to even exist. And that's why its only goal is reproduction. There's no cap to the madness. It has to be infinite and it has to be always. And just like, speaking about time, just going back to the TikTok mutual I mentioned, Alex Beightol, and her media analysis, she recently made this one video analyzing the production of content about dating and romance and how with the advent of social media, all of the work of a TV and film production and marketing firm has been collapsed into the work of one individual. Okay, here I'm going to play a little clip from her TikTok. Okay.
Of humiliation, vulnerability, and the consumption of human experiences through an independent content creator market that was shaped by a corporate content market. And that industry from the 1940s with Allan and his candid camera, that didn't create just a new type of content. In the words of Emily Nussbaum, it created a new kind of viewer. Lovers of both prestige and so-called trash TV, they can find a common ground with this type of content. It's commonly consumed, it's popular in the literal sense of the word, and it makes serious money. This whole job, what she's doing, is connected to billions of dollars of marketing. It is not frivolous. The rise of social media meant we were going to see something like this happening on an individual level because now you don't need a producer to make that show.
So instead of crews and investment money and, communications professionals, all of these roles are collapsed into the individual. When you post, whether or not you assume the title of creator, you become the producer, the director, the cinematographer, you're the costume stylist, you're the makeup artist, you're the gaffer, you're the editor, you're the marketing exec, et cetera, et cetera. And all of this while still also being the talent. Not only that, but the timeline from production to dissemination to consumption is exponentially shortened. A season of a reality show takes 6 months to make and maybe 2 to 3 months to roll out episodes. I don't know. I don't watch TV, but it takes a long time to roll out episodes as well, right? Social media content could take 15 minutes to make and post and watch. It's almost instantaneous. And with streamers, it is instantaneous. It's real time. The lag is maybe something like 5 seconds. And what this does is that it breaks down the temporal context. There's no sense of a beginning or an end. It just always is. We're just always on. We're always producing. It is the endless scroll. It is the time loop. And just really quick sideline here, but this is part of why I don't give a fuck about the music industry anymore. I just think it's so ridiculous that the expectations placed on musicians these days are not only to be the creator and the performer of your actual musical work, but now you essentially have to also be an entire TV production crew without the pay or the crew. It's you're expected to make the music, to tour, to build an audience, to sell records. Sure, fine. But then you're also expected to document and post everything you're doing and to narrativize it, including the intimate details of your artistic process. And you don't actually make money off of your posts in the same way that an influencer or, a creator does. What is happening actually is just that the fiscal and labor responsibility of marketing is moved from labels to you. So from corporate entities with legal protections where people have benefits and healthcare and working hours of 9 to 5, all of that just gets moved to you. And you are legally unprotected as an individual. You're not guaranteed an income or a salary or benefits or really like anything at all for all the work that you're doing. Not only that, but then you're also beholden to algorithms and platforms who can change their algorithms at any point without notice. So all of that work that you did and that you paid for with your time and your money could very suddenly just like no longer generate attention because the metrics are different now. Keeping up with all of that, that is like an entire second and third job. Like people have teams of professionals who normally take care of all of this stuff. But for some reason, as a musician, like the expectation is that you be a musician and that you do this as well. Like, guys, it's giving slavery. It's giving slavery. Like, oh my God, like I'm not doing all of that, okay? You know, and I'm here like I'm just speaking from experience and I'm just telling you guys, like it's a Sisyphean task. Like I hope it doesn't sound like I'm just complaining because I really believe that this is just another arm of the ever widening economic exploitation of the artist and the commodification of human experience. You know, when you actually look at this stuff, like the truth is that it is precarity that makes it so that you can never stop and you have to keep pumping out more and more content and you have to commodify more and more areas of your life. Like, and doing that, it affects the art, it affects the artist. And I know I'm tired of it, and I'm sure a lot of people are tired of it. And I'm saying all of this while also acknowledging that these same tools have also been a huge benefit for artists. You know, they've democratized entry, they've democratized who gets to have this as a career. Like, I'm not knocking any of that. The only thing I'm trying to say is just be careful and also know what you're signing up for. Like, just make sure that it all makes logical and economic sense to you, okay? Oh, God. Okay, my rant's over now. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So, all of these roles, they get collapsed into the individual, right? And the temporal context gets broken down as well, right? And now people want to be offline. They want to break from producing. They want to break from being seen and from all of this like hyper consumption, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where void space opens up because it's like, yes, people want to be offline, but it's not like we're wanting to sever connection or to destroy the online worlds. Like, I think that people are really just looking for an in between, you know, an alternative, something that combines the best parts of the physical and the digital. And I think void space is that answer because void space is fertile space, it's creative space, it's a space where something new can spring forth from. We don't have, you know, the answer yet of what this new way of being looks like, but with void space, we can imagine and we can try and we can figure it out. Cultivating void space is a way to break the loop. Void space interrupts the time loop. It interrupts overproduction. It interrupts the mechanisms of slop. It brings reprieve, relief, pleasure, and it actually extends time in a way. You know, time and space are always in relationship to each other. So when you open up time, you open up space. When you interrupt the loop, you end up having so much more time to do things other than to just consume and be stuck. You can move, you know? And void space is about creating more time, creating more space in order to create clarity. And part of creating that clarity is from a sense of clearing out. That's why void space often starts with the closing of doors, the feeling of less oxygen, less future, a sense of diminished optimism. You know, this allows for the arising of creative material because that's what limitations do. They squeeze you so you can change, so you can innovate and figure out a new way forward. What's that saying? Like, necessity is the mother of invention. And also, nature abhors a vacuum. You know, we need void space in order to create new things and to imagine new worlds and new futures. And I feel like collectively, this is where a lot of people are headed and where we're being pushed towards as well. So I've said all of that, and it's like how to put that into practice, right? Like how to practice cultivating void space. I'll just like talk about some of the ways that this looks like in practice. Sorry, I had a little interruption. But okay, so an example of some of the ways to cultivate void space. Number one, purposefully doing things that cannot be sped up. So things like reading a book, cooking, eating without watching or listening to something, sitting and thinking, like literally just like sitting and thinking, meditating, physically writing in a journal. It's just the idea of like doing one thing at a time and doing it in its own time, like not trying to speed it up or like make your way through it as quickly as possible. Resisting the urge to like multitask to try to get two things done at the same time, like really just like purposefully not trying to speed up time. Number two, allowing yourself to be bored. So purposefully doing something boring, even, that can be like I said, like sitting and thinking for an hour at a time, but it can also look like going out of your way to do something boring and unproductive, like counting grains of rice or trying to peel all the white stuff off of an orange, like purposefully trying to do boring things because being bored brings us into void space. We can actually learn a lot about ourselves from our boredom. Number three, another example is purposefully anchoring into the material. We live such mental and non material lives these days. So when you make the choice to anchor into the material, you bring yourself into void space. It can look like a lot of things. Like one example is printing out the articles you read and taking the time to highlight or underline the passages that you really like. Or it can look like doing yoga or dance, or some sort of movement that brings you into your body. Or it can also look like, just instead of like liking a friend's photo on Instagram, call them, ask them to hang out, go and sit in a park together and talk to them and tell them in person how much you liked their photo. Anything that gets you into your body or into the world, this is how you can anchor into the material. Number four, another example looks like resisting the urge to self-narrativize. And arguably, like, this is like the biggest one. And this is more of a mental process, but this looks like letting things go and not having them become a part of your story for yourself or others. You don't have to document everything. You don't have to post about your daily ongoings, you don't have to post your life to your stories or to TikTok anymore. No more real-time updates, Instead, you can try something like cumulative posts after a month or two, you know? Let the idea that you need to like publicly shape your narrative go. Another example could be like, okay, you have a weird interaction with someone. Let the interaction be weird and then let it go. It's not you that's weird or the other person that's weird. The interaction was weird. And now it's done and it's gone. And today is a new day. You don't need to make a TikTok story time about it. You don't need to like post to your close friend's story about it. Like, just let it go. Let the idea that you need to publicly shape your narrative go. Try to exist as a void for the algorithm until you really feel called to say something. So those are just like some examples, but the whole idea with all of these practices is not to pretend that the online world doesn't exist, but instead to cultivate a sense of in-betweenness. We want to resist overwhelm, but we also want to resist isolation. It's about being in the in-between, and it's in this in between space that we'll be able to find whatever it is that might come next. There's this quote, the last lines from The Great Gatsby, that I think about often and that I feel is just like very apt for these times that have fallen apart and that we are living through. And it goes, "And so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past." Beautiful. I love it. And yeah, and I think with that, I'm just going to end the episode here. I'd be really curious to hear your own thoughts about, going offline and being online as well. So feel free to drop a comment or DM me on the Diaries Instagram. Anyway, I love you guys and I'll see you later. Bye.